There are races where the one who finishes first isn't always the true winner. There are journeys where each step isn't measured by speed, but by companionship and human connection. And there are moments seemingly small, yet powerful enough to awaken a soul that's been chasing hollow glory for far too long. Today, I want to share a story with you. A story about a young girl, full of desire to win, believing that success meant being better than everyone else. But in what seemed like a simple competition in a quiet little village, she learned the greatest lesson of her life. A lesson not found in any textbook, not earned through trophies or medals, but given through a helping hand in a race where no one had to lose. Let me know if you'd like this adapted for voiceover or with a specific emotional tone. Back then, in a small village nestled among lush green hills, there lived a young girl named In. From the time she was little, and was known throughout the region for her agility and extraordinary determination. To everyone around her, she was the little wind, fierce, unstoppable, and never seeming to tire. But in Anne's heart, there was something even greater than speed, a burning desire to win. To her, success only came in one form: finishing first. The admiring eyes, the cheers from the crowd, the shine of glittering medals. Those were the things that fed her belief. If you want to be recognized, you have to be better than the rest. Then came a crisp autumn morning. The village's annual race was held, the most anticipated event of the year. 3 of the youngest and strongest were chosen to compete, and it was one of them. She stood at the starting line, eyes locked ahead, legs tensed like a drawn bowstring. Her 2 opponents were quick and determined too, but to win, no one was unbeatable. The whistle blew. Feet pounded the earth like drums of thunder. The 3 of them shot forward like arrows from a bow. Villagers lined the road, shouting, cheering, and just as she had imagined, and surged ahead in the final stretch, crossing the finish line at an unbelievable speed. She threw her head back, arms raised to the sky, as if catching the glory raining down from above. The crowd erupted in celebration. Children ran to hug her. The elders nodded with pride. This girl, their very own, had won. But in the midst of the roaring applause and radiant faces, only one person stood still. An elderly woman, hair silver like morning mist, leaning on a cane, eyes deep as if they had witnessed 1,000 moons. She looked at him with no anger, no joy, only a stillness, calm and quiet like a lake at dusk, and didn't notice. All she could feel was pride swelling inside her. I won. I'm the fastest. And for that young girl, in that moment, that was all that mattered. That first victory was like a dazzling beam of light, igniting a fire of pride in Anne's heart. The young girl walked the cobbled paths of the village with weightless steps, greeted by smiles and proud glances from everyone she passed. People called her name. Children watched her as if they were looking at a hero. And then she began to believe that being celebrated was the most wonderful feeling in the world. Not long after, a second race was announced. This time, her competitors were 2 tall young men, strong, muscular, and fiercely competitive. One was the blacksmith's son, known for hauling bricks with bare hands. The other was a student from the city, home for the summer, tall, athletic, a former district champion, but wasn't intimidated. In fact, she felt a thrill inside. The tougher the race, the greater the glory, she thought. And then, quietly to herself, they'll cheer even louder this time, because I won't just win, I'll beat the strongest. At the starting line, and took a deep breath. She recalled the moment she crossed the finish line before, the applause, the villagers' eyes, and the way she had felt so important. If I win this one too, she thought, I'll become a legend. The race began. The first strides were tight and fierce. Her opponents didn't make it easy. Step by step, they stayed close. But then, like a familiar rhythm returning, and began to pull ahead. She poured every ounce of strength, every bit of willpower into the run. Nothing else existed except the finish line and the glory that awaited beyond it. And once again, she was the first to cross. She collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air, arms raised like a fated victor. And just like before, the crowd exploded with applause. Villagers swarmed around her, laughing, clapping. Some ran to shake her hand, others even lifted her off the ground. In the roar of it all, and felt like a shining star, glowing bright in a sky of ordinary people. But once again, the silver-haired woman stood still. Her eyes, just as deep as before, offered no congratulations, no smile, no praise. She simply looked at him, not with sadness, not with judgment, but with a stillness that made him pause. Just for a moment. Then the applause rose again, washing over every thought. And then reminded herself, they're still cheering for me. I'm right. I'm still the winner. Pride still shimmered in Anne's eyes as she walked through the cheerful crowd. 2 back-to-back victories had convinced her that no challenge was too great. She held her head high, heart pounding with excitement, and only one thought echoed in her mind. Keep going. One more race. I'll prove that no one can ever catch up to me. And as if hearing the voice in her heart, the silver-haired woman stepped forward. Her eyes were as calm as a still lake. She gave a gentle nod, then motioned for 2 new people to come forward, and turned to look and paused, confused. One was an elderly woman, her back hunched, her steps trembling like the last leaf of autumn. Beside her stood a frail young man, blank eyes staring ahead, one hand resting quietly on a thin walking stick. He couldn't hear. He said nothing, and stood frozen. "These are my opponents," she asked, nearly laughing, thinking it must be some kind of joke. "This is your next race," the older woman said slowly. "Go on, run," and frowned. But the confidence inside her was too deeply rooted to be shaken by something so strange. She looked at the 2 challengers, then stepped into position. If this is a race, I'll still win, she thought. The signal sounded, and it shot forward. Behind her, the elderly woman hadn't even begun to move, and the young man remained at the starting line, hand quietly feeling the ground, lost in silence, and crossed the finish line alone. No effort, no struggle. She raised her arms like always, but silence. No applause, no cheers, no children running to hug her. The villagers looked at one another, saying nothing. The crowd stood still, as if time itself had paused. The wind rustled the trees, but no one moved. Anne's heart skipped. She turned around, eyes searching the starting line. The old woman was still inching forward, step by trembling step. The young man stood unmoved, confused, unaware. She looked up, seeking the silver-haired woman's gaze. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "Why aren't they cheering for me?" The woman looked at her with eyes both firm and gentle. She didn't scold. She didn't praise. She simply said, "Run the race again. But this time, don't finish it alone," and stood still. And for the first time in her life, her heart fell heavy. For the first time, she realized maybe winning wasn't always something to be proud of, and stood still at the finish line, the wind brushing gently through her hair, as if whispering that something had changed. Her heart fell hollow. No cheering, no admiring eyes, no children running up, calling her name in joy. Everything was silent. This didn't feel like any victory she'd ever known. She looked down at her feet, the same feet that once carried her past rivals across finish lines in a storm of applause. But now they trembled, not from exhaustion, but from doubt. "But I came in first," and whispered to herself, as if trying to hold on to a truth that no longer made sense. She turned her head, searching for the familiar gaze of the silver-haired woman, and there she was, still standing, still silent, like a mountain that had seen countless seasons come and go. Her expression hadn't changed. No scolding, no praise, and yet something was different. Something in her eyes asked a quiet question that went straight into Anne's heart, and swallowed hard. She stepped forward, chest rising and falling, not from the race, but from something deeper that had cracked open inside her, a truth she had never faced before. "Why?" she asked, voice barely louder than the rustle of leaves in a quiet forest. "I won," but no one smiled. No one clapped. "Why is this time different?" The woman didn't answer right away. She looked instead toward the old woman, still inching forward, and the blind young man who hadn't moved, his hand still holding the cane. as if waiting for something that never came. Then she turned back to him, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. Her voice was low and warm, like the breath of autumn at dusk. You ran fast, but only you crossed the finish line. This race wasn't just for you to win. It was meant to be a journey together. That old woman cannot run alone. That young man cannot see his path. But you have strength. You have the fastest feet in the village. You could have taken them with you. And froze. Her heart sank. She looked back at the path she had just run, a road no one else had traveled with her, a lonely victory. And for the first time, she began to understand that maybe winning didn't always mean being the first to finish. She lifted her gaze, eyes meeting the woman's. There was a soft light shining in those deep, quiet eyes, not demanding an answer, but waiting for something deeper, an awakening. And in that moment, all one could do was ask quietly, "Then what should I do?" The silver-haired woman didn't answer right away. She simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that seemed to hold 1,000 quiet truths. Then she gave a soft nod, not a command, but an invitation, silent but full of meaning, and turned and walked back toward the starting line. The crowd still stood in silence, but something had shifted. No longer dazzled admiration in their eyes, but something deeper, hope. They were waiting, not to see her win, but to see who she would become. The old woman still stood trembling at the painted line, bony fingers gripping her cane as if it held the last threads of her courage. Beside her, the blind young man stood still, his face tilted toward the wind, trying to understand a world he couldn't see, and stepped forward slowly. Her heart pounded, not with the thrill of competition, but with something warmer, steadier, as if she were about to do the most right thing she'd ever done. She stood between them, and without a word, she reached out her hands. One hand gently took the old woman's fragile fingers. The other, she placed softly into the blind boy's open palm. He froze for a moment. Then slowly he smiled, as if he had just found his first anchor in the darkness. There was no whistle, no starting gun, but they began. 3 people, 3 rhythms, one shared will, and no longer ran. She walked, slowly, patiently, each step a quiet breath. The old woman leaned into her shoulder, gasping softly but still going. The blind boy followed the wind's whisper, and the steady hand that never let go. The path, once short, now stretched longer than ever, but never hadn't felt so light. And when the 3 of them finally reached the finish line, with no first, no last, the village erupted. Applause filled the air, not for speed, but for the beauty of human kindness. Children ran to hug the old woman. Adults grasped the blind boy's hands. And then she stood among them, radiant like the morning sun. The silver-haired woman smiled and stepped beside her. No praise, no fanfare, just eyes warm as spring sunshine, looking deeply into hers. This time you didn't win, but you helped all of us win together. And said nothing. She simply nodded. And for the first time in her life, she understood. The most beautiful race is the one we never run alone. As the crowd gradually quieted down, the silver-haired woman stepped forward and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. This time, she didn't need to say anything grand. Her eyes, deep and still, held the weight of a life fully lived, and all it had to do was look into them to understand. She was no longer the headstrong girl from that morning, no longer the one who always ran to finish first, chasing applause. Now it stood still, like a tree that had finally rooted itself after a storm of pride. The woman asked softly, "Have you seen what truly matters?" And looked up at the sky, now bathed in the gentle glow of twilight. The last light of day cast a golden warmth across the village. She nodded, for the first time, with a calm that came from somewhere deeper. "I understand now," she said. "In life, it's not always about being faster than everyone else to be a winner. Sometimes, what really matters is who we walk with, and whether we help someone else reach the finish line too." The woman smiled. It was the kind of smile that closes a lesson, not through words, but through the heart. Then she turned toward the crowd. Her voice wasn't loud, but it reached everyone, as if carried by the wind. Each of us will one day have to run the race of our life. But if we run only to be better than others, then in the end, we'll find ourselves alone at the finish line. What matters most isn't the finish itself, but the people we held on to, guided, and loved along the way. A soft silence settled over the village. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. Warm eyes turned toward him. And this time, she didn't need applause. She didn't need the spotlight. Those eyes were enough. Because now, she knew she had won, in the most beautiful way possible. As the sky deepened into evening, and walked away from the finish line, but nothing weighed on her anymore. That race, though it had no winner in the usual sense, had helped her grow in the truest way. Because from this day forward, she would no longer run to win, but live to walk with others. Late afternoon settled quietly over the village. The soft golden light fell on the dusty road where the race had taken place, no longer marked by hurried footsteps, but by the lingering echo of a lesson that had touched every heart. And sat alone beneath the ancient tree, her fingers gently turned over fallen yellow leaves, as if sifting through the pages of the path she had walked. She no longer felt regret for the victories of her past, but now she understood what she had been chasing might not have been what she truly needed. She thought of the blind boy who had trusted her hand, of the elderly woman, steady in every struggling step, and of the silver-haired woman's gaze, eyes that seemed to carry a lifetime, now passing on the most precious truth. Life is not a competition. It's a journey. Along that journey, there will always be those who can't move as quickly, can't see as clearly, can't bear the same burdens. But that doesn't make them lesser. If anything, their presence gives our journey meaning. Because a life spent racing ahead alone leaves no one to share the joy when you arrive. But a life spent reaching out for others turns every step, no matter how slow, into a quiet victory. And closed her eyes, letting the wind weave through her hair, letting her soul touch something deeper, a true stillness. She whispered to herself, a message meant not only for her, but for anyone lost in the race of life. What are you running for? Are you running with someone, or just trying to outrun everyone? If you only fix your eyes on the finish line, you might miss the most precious people along the way. And if you arrive first, but no one stands beside you when you turn around, is that truly a victory? The wind blew again, soft as a nod of agreement, and smiled. She stood up, brushed off her coat, and began walking back toward the village, where her loved ones waited. This time, she didn't need applause. She needed only one thing: to walk, not to win, but to go far, with someone by her side. Life is not a race to see who's faster, stronger, or better. Life is a journey where every step is a chance to connect, to share, to lift each other up. And one day, you'll come to realize crossing the finish line alone was never the most important thing. Because true value doesn't lie in how many people you outran, but in how many you brought across the finish line with you. So when you run, don't just keep your eyes on the goal. Look back, reach out your hand, and walk together, even if it's slow, as long as it's not alone. Because the most beautiful race is the one where no one gets left behind.